Okay, so now we come to the last aspect of innovative pedagogy, that is assessment methods. We've already done blended learning. We did higher order thinking skills. We did the skills and competencies that our students should be prepared with when they leave our institution. And now we come to assessment method. I think as teachers, all of us know that assessment is a very important part of learning, because it's only there we will be able to understand how much the student has learned. Not only we as teachers, but also for the student, it is important to understand how much of the information that has been given to him or her in the class that he or she has been able to imbibe. Sometime back, the assessment came to be associated with upward social mobility. How is that? That is because those people who scored well in their exams, did well in their academics, they got into their preferred jobs. So what they wanted to join, they were able to join. So naturally, the focus was on the better you do, the more easy it will be to get you jobs or careers which you prefer. The assessment can be of different types. The recent most assessments that have become part of all our vocabularies is formative and summative assessment. What is formative assessment? Is the assessment that we do while teaching. That is when we take quiz, or we ask students answers, or we give them homework. All those things are part of formative assessment. That is, we are while teaching, we are able to understand two things: whether the student is able to understand what we are teaching, and secondly, whether we need to change our teaching style, or the amount of information that we are giving is too much for the students to sort of absorb. So all these things we get to know through formative assessment. Summative assessment is the traditional form of assessment, that is the end of the unit test or end of the semester exam. So these are summative assessments. Let's see what is the difference between the two. As we can see here, the formative assessments are quizzes, any of the observations that you made, who are the students who participate more in discussions, whom do you have to push to give some answer in the class, classworks, homeworks, all the written work, everything that we do in the class is what we refer to as the formative assessment. Summative assessment is the end of the unit exam test that you take, end of the term that we have exam. And these tell us what the student has been able to learn through the whole semester or year, whenever we are taking the test. So SATs, we know, are the what were referred to as the scholastic achievement test. And ACT is not there in our country. It is related to the American testing style. The assessment not only gives us feedback about how much the student has learned, but it can also act as a motivational tool for the students. How would the student be motivated by the results that he receives? The student will be able to take assessment as a motivation when we as teachers emphasize more upon what the student has achieved rather than what he has not been able to do. So even if the student has made a small improvement, say earlier he got 30 out of 50 or 25 out of 50, now he has got 35. So for that student, it has taken a lot of effort to get those 5 marks extra. So we need to appreciate the student's effort in getting those higher marks rather than pointing out that he or she has marked so many answers incorrectly. The feedback is given with the purpose of helping the student to move forward, learn more. Then the feedback acts as a motivation. When we give that responsibility to the student to understand how much they have learned so far, it becomes their responsibility to accept that, okay, I have done this much of effort till now, and I need to put in more effort if I want to score better. The students, when the teacher gives them that feeling that, okay, it is your progress that matters to me more than what your failures are, the students are also more confident about taking risks. They attempt answers which they may not know the answer with full clarity, but they still attempt it. And of course, the feedback that we give as teachers, that acts as a kind of a support or a scaffolding for those students to learn further. When we are assessing, these are few important questions that we need to ask ourselves. What do we want our students to learn at the course level, program level, university level? What is it the student should have learned by the end of the course? How is our student doing? And how do we know how much he has achieved? So if our idea is to know how much they have achieved rather than finding out what they don't know, then our assessment is somewhere going wrong, and we need to find out. So our aim at assessment should be to assess what the student knows rather than what he or she doesn't know. We also, important question that we need to ask for ourselves is that from the results of the student, what does it tell us about our information? How are we disseminating the information? Is our teaching really reaching our students? Are the students able to understand what I'm teaching in class? And whether the students are able to assimilate the information that is coming to them. Then we also need to see what improvement actions we can take with our students so that they are able to learn better. And finally, how are we going to document that assessment and the improvement activities that are taking place? So direct assessment of tests and exams is very easy, because you teach the student for the whole semester. At the end of the semester, you give the student a test or an exam, and you will immediately know how much the student has learned. It is during the process, that is what we refer to as the internal assessment, that is a little bit more difficult, because for that we have to define our own parameters on what are we going to assess the students. This is the traditional way in which we do the assessment. That is, we develop the program for the student. We identify methods and measures by which we are going to disseminate the information and assess it. Then we also determine what for us is success. What is the percentage that we expect from our students, or what is the GPA point that we expect. We collect all that data and analyze it, and we decide that, okay, these are the students who require improvement. We take some actions for improvement. Again, after the improvement intervention that we have tried to give, what is the student's outcome after that? This is what we do in the traditional method. But now we are talking about innovative pedagogy. So here the assessment should become more learner centered. That is, we help the students or help the learners to make their own plan as to what is the information they want to learn, when do they feel that they want to move on to the next level. We, instead of teaching, we become coaches to the learners, and they expect them to take coaching from us, rather than we don't have that superior position of I know it all. Then we also, through discussions and encouraging the students to participate in the class, we are encouraging multiple perspectives. That is, the same information is looked upon by different people in a different way. The activities should be real life, so that the student is able to learn how to apply the information that the student is learning in theory. Then then we tell them, or we help them to think about their thinking, that what made them think or look at this situation from this particular perspective. We again, the role becomes different from that of a teacher, that is become the guide to help them become better at whatever they are doing. We evaluate the learner's thinking process rather than the amount of information that they have learned, and then the cycle continues. So you can see this is a very different type of assessment procedure. This is more learner centered. If you remember, we talked about the student being able to decide what, where, and when the student wants to learn. So if we are going to teach in a different manner, we will need to assess in a different manner also. These are the different types of tests that are there, and we can use whichever whenever we think is going to be the best to give us the information. You can have group tests, but when we are talking about individual learning, then you give an individual test. Many times in the lower classes, junior classes, we have oral responses, and even in the senior classes we have vivas, that is one-to-one individual test. Then we have formal tests and informal ones. Then we have norm referenced, that that we have for the entrance, that how many students have appeared, and you give them the ranking according to the way the students have marked their answers. So you don't have a person in one group, a person with 60% can also fall in the top 90 percentile, because it depends on how others have done. But we also have the criterion reference, that is, this is the question, this is the expected answer, and only if the person has given that answer, that person would get the score for that. Then we have screening and we have diagnostic tests. The diagnostic tests are where the students are having problems in some specific area, so to find out why the student is having a problem in that area. So basically what I'm trying to say over here is that there is no test or no assessment technique which is which we can say is good or bad, because basically the idea is that the assessment should be based on the purpose. If that assessment fulfills the purpose with which we are doing the assessment, then that assessment procedure is the right assessment procedure. So in different situations, you may require different techniques of assessment. Basically, if you look at the assessment, there are three types. This has been, if you go on to the net, you can find this book. It's called Rethinking Classroom Assessments with Purpose in Mind, which was published by the author quite some time back. And there is also the Western and North Canadian Protocol for Collaboration in Education, which was published in 2006. And they have been using the assessment procedures that I'm going to be talking about. So as long back as 2006, these assessment procedures have been in place. So we have three types of assessments: assessments for learning, assessment as learning, assessment of learning. Assessment of learning is what we usually do. Let's look at what are the other two. So assessment for learning, it is designed to give teachers information to modify and differentiate teaching and learning activities. That is, you accept that every student is different and learns in different ways, and therefore we need to customize our teaching to be able to reach every student in the class. So this, of course, is an offshoot from what we've been talking about, innovative pedagogy. We are talking, again, the focus over here is student-centric. That is, what is the student's ability to absorb, when and how much. So naturally, if we are going to individualize dissemination of information, then assessment also needs to be individualized. The purpose over here is assessing over here is that you understand how much the student has been able to understand, what he has been able to apply from the information that he has learned. So in a way, it helps the teacher to streamline and the instruction process and target the instruction and the resources which are there in the educational institute, to provide the feedback to the student and also to help them to move further in their education. So there are three keys which we can use. One is, where is the learner now? Secondly, where the learner is going. And thirdly, how to get there. So once we have assessed where the learner is now, then we design the program in such a way that we are able to enhance the students' learning in a particular direction. So where the learner is going and how do we bridge that gap? Where the student is now to where the student has to reach, how should we bridge that gap? What are the strategies we need to employ so that we help the student to reach that final goal? So if you can see over here, you plan according to what do I want the students to learn, then what do? I teach, and also I learn in a way indirectly through the students, whether I'm able to get through to them or not. Then what do? You evaluate the student's work so that you're able to find out where the student is now and where we want to take him, or where the student wants to go. And in the process, when we evaluate, we realize, okay, these are the strategies that are required. So we help the student to revise, reinforce, teach with different other strategies in order to be for helping the person to move forward. Coming to the next aspect, that is assessment as learning. What do we mean by assessment as learning? Because assessment as learning, it is a process of developing and supporting metacognition for students. That is, they are able to understand the role of the student, which is the most important connecting feature between the assessment and the learning. So the learning is being done by the student, the assessment is being done of the student. So the assessment becomes like a kind of insight for the student as to where I am at present and where is it that I would like to go. So now if we look at the metacognitive approach, we will see that there are three steps to it. One, of course, is during the learning process, but there are some things which come before we reach this stage. And of course, there are some things which are the outcomes of the process. So before we come to the situation where the student is actually doing something, the student thinks of or reinforces for himself or herself about what he or she has learned before, so that he or she can find out or decide whether in this new learning process, is there any past information which I will be able to use, which I will be able to utilize. So the student thinks that what have I done before this? They think about their various strengths and strategies that they have employed earlier, and they also assess whether these same strategies are going to be useful in the present situation or not. Then to do that also, it's important for the student to set certain goals that, okay, why am I doing this activity? This activity is being done because I want to reach a certain level of learning. So during the process of learning, the student can use trial and error method, using what they had used earlier to see whether it works now as well. Then when they see that this is not working, then okay, what do I need to change? And okay, when I'm doing all this learning, am I reaching, or am I in the process of reaching my goals that I had formulated for myself? Then after the learning process, the student also tries to see whether what the strategies that I have employed have worked for me or not. If they have not worked for me, or they have partially worked for me, so what is it that I need to improve or alter? And then that learning gets generalized to other tasks. The assessment of learning is something I think we are all familiar with. That is, in the lessons we impart certain information, and at the end of that we assess the student as to how much the learning has taken place. So we measure what is the improvement of the student over time. We motivate the students to study more so that they can do better. We evaluate the teaching methods as well as the learning methods, and then we rank the students' capabilities as compared to the entire class. That, okay, who's standing first, second, third? When we say that the topper of the class, then we are ranking the student according to the capabilities of the student. So just to summarize what we have done so far, assessment for learning enables the teachers to use information about students' knowledge, understanding, and skills to inform their teaching. The teacher provides feedback to students about their learning and how to improve. The assessment as learning involves the students in the learning process, where they monitor their own progress, ask questions, and practice their skills. The students use self-assessment and teacher feedback to reflect on their learning, consolidate their understanding, and work towards learning goals. So this is basically the entire responsibility lies with the student as to how much and when they want to learn. The assessment of learning assists the students to use evidence of student learning to assess student achievement against learning goals and standards that we have set as teachers, that, okay, this is the amount of learning that the student is expected to learn at the end of this semester. So with this, I come to the end of innovative pedagogy. Thank you so much. I hope I have been able to impart something which is maybe something which is new, which you may not have thought of earlier. Thank you so much.